So my brother misappropriated, not your figure, but it's like $985,000. And when it was brought to my attention that was going on, we brought in an outside auditor to come up with a number. Once we came up with a number, we consulted with lawyers, and the management council of staff looked at the legal opinions. You could have restitution or you could have retribution. And the decision was to go with restitution, a repayment plan that allowed that. He'd worked for the organization for 20 years. People thought there were other contributions he could make. People may disagree, but he was taken out of any impact on finances, which is where he'd been, and he tried in his own way to both pay back what he'd misappropriated as well as expiate what, live through his shame, if you will. Now,
has that money been paid back?
Absolutely, every dime, and it's been publicly reported extensively. It was paid back throughout that period. The second thing you ask is something about 2 board members and whatever. That actually happened after I left. So I'll get into that. But at the point, the executive committee of the organization and the management made a decision to handle it privately and to not more publicly, deal with the situation. I implemented that program. At the point that 8.5, 9 years later it became public, I immediately disclosed it to the full board and membership to the degree there were some people unhappy. I didn't carry the title chief organizer or train people about final responsibility because I didn't believe in it. My hope was if there were any people who disagreed on the board or membership of our organization, I owed them my resignation and I resigned on June 2nd. Frankly, hoping that would solve the problem. So, among the many things that I think are tragic and sad about this is it didn't solve the problem. And I gather after I left, because of some of the internal politics of the board, there were some problems. I can tell you this. In 38 years that I worked for the board, there was only one person who was ever expelled from membership. He was a leader out of Reno, Nevada, who somehow, without going to any membership, endorsed some politician in Reno, and it became a whole mess. And so he managed to have his membership not renewed. But pretty much when I was at ACORN, it was a free-floating, wild culture. If you had, a position, you took that position. If you won with the votes, you prevailed. So I don't know anything about kicking people off or not kicking people off. You need to talk to the new management about how that all may have worked or not worked. I wasn't involved in that. Are there any other questions I didn't touch? So,
Why didn't you make it public? You said that you resigned after the full board became aware of it, but why did it take so long for the full board of the organization to become aware of it?
Because the executive committee and the management council made a decision to keep it privately to deal with the restitution. They were worried, and I've been quoted everywhere from the New York Times on out, they were worried about how this information would be weaponized to deal with the organization. I'm not going to get into whether or not I made the perfect implementation of this program or not, but I can say this, looking at the current problems that ACORN's having, kind of makes me wonder if maybe that executive committee and that management council didn't have a better recognition of how vulnerable the organization was to attack and how any misstep within the organization might become a threat to its very survival. That's what's happening now from what I gathered. That was the earlier question. I think that's,
But is the threat from your own corruption, or is it because people are out to get you? It seems to me like...
Threat from your own corruption. You want to talk to somebody else about that?
It just sounds like you're just...
Audits, investigations, lawyers, crawled all up my leg for, all the years I've done this work, and there's never a dime in this place. So I don't know who this hour is besides you and the rat in your pocket. But it's not anybody that has to do with me. Now, in terms of whether or not, of the thousands of people that work for us, it's a huge, tragic problem that happened to be somebody from my family, and that's very regrettable in my view. There's no apologies that are sufficient. But if you want to say, that's a culture of, 38 years, there was that one problem. There are many organizations, there are many newspapers, there are many magazines, there are many businesses that have problems and they go forward.